Well, it's that time of the year again. Well, you know, the shifting of the containers from smaller into bigger could be done all year long. But for trimming of the pine, especially for me, I have to wait till it gets nice and cool because the needles poke and I get a rash. And well, we're into sort of the middle of October. No, it's November. It's the middle of November now, so it's nice and cool. In fact, I'll be wearing a sweatshirt and a long sleeve. That should protect me. Today is going to be fairly nice weather, no rain, but tomorrow they say rain and wind. So I'm going to get as much work done as I can. So I have all my equipment ready, right? So, well, you know, when you're mixing soil, I think I've been telling you that for myself, I'm using 3 parts compost, 1 part sand, and 1 part lava rock, right? So yesterday, what I did was I threw all that component into that cement mixer, right? And now I'm ready to go. In fact, I have this. I knew I was going to try to do as many as possible, so I got quite a bit of soil ready. Boy, isn't this exciting? Take your rubber mallet. You know, these containers are more than 20, some are 30 years old. The old ones last a lot longer than the new. Well, everything looks good. See this white right here? Can you see this? That's the good beneficial bacteria or fungus or something like that. It's a good relationship between the plant and the soil. So when you see this in a black pine, it's a good thing. When I first started, I thought, oh my God, I got an infected plant. And then I did some research and I said, it's a good thing. But anyway, what I'm going to do is to kind of scratch this thing up before I put it in. And I'm going to take my saw and cut around here so that, well, there's nothing that is actually Okay, next step, I'm going to take this, see, make sure it's not coiling, get to the next size and get into the fresh soil. Not too much. Okay, I got it in the container. It doesn't seem like it's going to be that much more soil, but the last one I did about like this, it was a whole wheelbarrow full, about 20 some odd gallon. So actually it's kind of misleading. There's going to be sufficient fresh soil to make this thing a little healthier. Well, I noticed this one here, the color wasn't as good as some of the others. So I put this on priority. It's not sick or anything like that. I think it's just that you could use a fresher soil. Well, it's getting fresher soil now. Okay, in our bonsai, we typically use a chopstick. Well, we got to have something heavier than that. Well, I think this was one of the gardening tools. Can't remember, but it works. Now there's some areas that are narrow. I'm going to have to get a smaller one and get that. And the whole trick is you got to get this thing packed again. And if you don't, and there's an air pocket, what would happen is in the middle of the summertime, it just kind of suddenly gets weak and die because you hit that air pocket. So I'm going to carefully repack this thing. Okay, what I'm going to do next is this time-release fertilizer, right? This green thing here. Okay, now they benefit from being slightly under the soil. Not too deep, though, they say. But one word of caution. You know, in the bottom part, we were really pushing really hard to pack this in. But once you put this fertilizer, don't do that, because what happens, you damage the outside shell, which makes the time control, right? Time release. So you'll break those prells and you'll end up burning. I've seen people do that when they don't realize that this type of fertilizer, you cannot be breaking these. Okay, next is the pruning. Okay, based on what we did in terms of putting it in a big container, we don't actually have to prune, right? Because we did not disturb the root much. Actually, we didn't remove a whole lot, just a little bit on the surface, mostly scratch. So technically, we do not have to prune, but it's in time for the pruning. If this was just in this container, it still needs pruning. So that's what I'm going to be doing. And then on the pines we do some touch-ups and minor pruning, and then occasionally we do this really heavy thing. And I think this is about time for the heavy pruning. And then, well, I think those of you that have been following me, we know that around here we have to prune a certain way because of our extremely hot summers. So I'll get started. Like I said, we're in the middle of November, so we have plenty of time for this to grow back before the summer heat. So I'm going to go ahead and start cutting back fairly severely. Well, let's start with these real obvious ones. You know, these as growing up. Remove the center candle. Almost always remove the center candle, especially one that going up. But this one here, I think we should go back further, so I'll go ahead and do it like that, and then back to removing the center candle, unless you miss the season. You know, black pine is one of the hardest things to teach, maybe because I don't really understand it fully. I know how to get there, but sometimes, just because you know how to do it, don't mean you could explain it. But I was reading, and they said there's like 32 techniques based on what you're trying to accomplish. Well, I haven't quite figured out what that meant. Actually, there was a article written in English. They try to explain 12 techniques, and I couldn't understand that either. The written language and doing it is totally different. Well, I still get the most questions on the black pine, and I think I just keep doing it. Up there, there's a lot of thinning out to be done. I'm just going to show you this as a before shot, and then I'll show you when I get done. You know, I think I'm getting very close to 1,000 chapters now on this YouTube. And it seems like I've been at it for almost 10 years. It seems like I just got started the other day. But, and so any question that anybody has, it's already been answered. So, but how many people have the time to go back 10 years and 1,000 chapters trying to figure out what the question was? So I'm going to just kind of repeat things. Well, I don't want to do repeat, but we're constantly getting new people. And I think so some of the things that need to be said, I guess, could be repeated. Plus, I think my camera work has improved a little bit more than when I first started. Oh yeah, when I first started, we didn't have this high definition presentation, so I used to get a lot of comments and complaints about that. And I think I got most of that solved. We're not into 4K or 6K or 8K or whatever it is that's current. I got it in high definition, and I quit getting complaints, so it must be okay. Well, anyway, that's the difficult part. How do I keep doing this and keep it fresh? But anyway, I'll go ahead and do the top, and then I'll get back to you. Okay, I think I got that thinned out. So now I'll go back and do the rest. Not much to it, is there? Just the same repetition over and over again. Well, this is what a 40-year effort looks like. And it's not even my older one, right? Others are pushing 50, although many of those are gone now because that lady bought it about 3-4 years ago, and it's now in Atherton, the very exclusive area in the Bay Area. Now, everybody have their own style, right? This one here, most people, I think, would remove this lower branch. These don't need to be here. But my teacher, Mr. Yamashita, he said, hey, leave those branches because you could always take them off, but you can't add it. And then around here, because our extreme heat and then hot setting sun, those will protect the trunk. So yeah, so it has multiple purposes. And then when it goes, well, the ones that ended up in the cool area like San Francisco, Atherton, and then probably the ones that went to San Diego are going to be pruned much more open. Okay, now I'm going to try something that hopefully you can kind of visualize. I sure hope you have a great imagination because this two pots represent a nice Japanese lantern. Well, if it was to go in like that, then you could visualize all these being gone, right? It kind of fits right in there. So that's what I'm thinking in terms of this ultimately in a Japanese garden, a nice big boulder or a lantern, something like that. Yeah, so I have to design things so that it has multiple uses. Let me tell you an interesting story. You know, I had these guys that came from San Diego Japanese Garden there to pick up my donation, right? Anyway, we didn't have a whole lot of time to talk, but we had a time to talk, and he was saying that there was a flower arrangement instructor or teacher that came one time to the garden, and he requested and did chop off the apex. I said, wow, that guy or gal should be shot, right? But Mr. Yamashita, the one that taught me, he said, leave these lower branches, go ahead, shape it, and when it's time to remove, then call one of the flower arrangement instructor. They love this pine. So I've always had that in my mind, but you don't take it off the apex in the garden. I mean, that's just not right. Anyway, I hear a lot of interesting stories. Well, next time I'm at the San Diego Friendship Garden in Balboa, I am going to go talk to those construction workers. The guys that's been, the one that picked up the trees, been working there for over 20 years. So they probably have a lot of story to tell. But anyway, this is only the second of the pines, and I'm probably going to do at least a half a dozen. So I better say goodbye for now. I'll see you again real soon in another chapter. This has been a Japanese black pine that needed a bigger container.